Hi, namaste, and welcome to Breakout with me, Abha. Thank you so much for watching. As you know, we bring to you exceptional game changers, people who are thought transformers, who have been there and done that, and they are here to share their insights with all of us so that we can break out of something that we find limiting and break into stuff that we find absolutely necessary for us. Because from them we learn that there is only one rule to life, and that is that there are no rules to life. We just make them up all on the way. And my guest today, yet another exceptional gentleman, former CEO of 5 firms, ranging from a startup to a $1 billion New York Stock Exchange company, and including winners of a state level Malcolm Baldrige Quality Award and the Shingo Prize for Operational Excellence. He's a Baker Scholar graduate. You know what that means? Top 5% of the Harvard Business School. You're going to hear some good stuff now. A magna cum laude graduate of Princeton University and a certified leadership instructor from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government and Phi Theta Kappa Society. He's been named one of the top thought leaders in trust for 2013 to 2016, as well as one of the American Management Association's leaders to watch in 2015. Bob, my guest today. Please welcome him, Bob Van Urek. Bob, how are you?
I'm well, Abba. Thank you so much for that glorious introduction. I wish my mother were alive to hear it today.
It's all you. I have a lot more. I have a lot more stuff to say here, but I think I'll let you speak of that. You're a decorated army officer as well, and you've been working around leadership all your life. And your book, I know about your book that you co-authored a book called the Triple Crown Leadership: Building Excellent, Ethical, and Enduring Organizations, and that was the best leadership book since Good to Great. Wow, wow.
Well, yes, and I had the honor to co-author that with my adult son, Greg, who teaches leadership and entrepreneurship at the Royal Institute in Stockholm, Sweden, and that was a wonderful experience, Abba.
Wow, that's great. And now you have an upcoming book now, which is ready for release in May 2016. When is that? This is a leadership book, and I mean I'm gonna say that to the viewers and listeners, everybody who's watching. You know what? Have you ever heard of leadership via poetry, literature, and prose and stuff like that? Bob's done that. His book is called Leadership Wisdom: Lessons from Poetry, Prose, and Curious Verse. Bob, when are we seeing this book?
Well, the book is out now, and we're very excited about it. I realize that poetry has such wisdom in it, and the words are so beautiful. The poetic prose is also so beautiful. And why do we have to look to current day CEOs or academics for leadership insights when we have the wisdom of the masters? And
Exactly.
and when we look at what they have written, Abba, we see that it touches our hearts and elevates our souls.
Right.
And so I'm very excited about leadership wisdom lessons from poetry, prose, and curious verse.
I love the title because I myself am a published poet. I really think words have so much power and the way they can touch you. I do not think any academic literature can even get there because we got to get to the deeper levels to understand what leadership or life or soul or thinking really means. And poetry does that so beautifully well. I was reading Khalil Gibran yesterday while I was reading about your book, and I said this is like one of those wordplay stuff. We play with words and we create something so beautiful. Now, this book is. I was reading about all the things that are happening around this book. A lot of stuff is happening around this book, and you have also done a podcast. You have a podcast interview about that book, where you say this is a compendium of timeless leadership wisdom from the sages of literature written over the centuries. 70 poems, prose, and speech passages, each with an insightful leadership message. Now, I looked through the content of that. I looked at the index, and I was like overwhelmed by the number of number of authors and poets and writers that I saw there. Where did this come about? What hit you that you thought of this?
Well, I've been a student of leadership my whole life, as you kindly said in your introduction, but I've also loved poetry. I started to write poetry to my wife many, many years ago when we were in high school.
Okay.
And then in college, I also read a lot of poetry. So I have a lot of poetry anthologies on my bookcase. And when I was going to write my second book after Triple Crown Leadership, I said, why don't we go back to the wisdom of the masters? So I looked for a dozen or so poets, maybe 20. And I just got so excited, and I got on the internet to look at current poets. So I ended up with over 70 poems or prose passages that
Right.
have a leadership message. And then I coupled them with my commentary, what I've learned, what mistakes I've made over the years,
Right.
and more importantly, Abba, for your audience, practical applications. When you read Shakespeare, when you read Gibran or Rumi,
Right.
and he says something insightful, what can you do today to apply
Yeah.
that to your life? So that's why I was so excited about the book.
I completely understand that because I pick up stuff and I simply say, how can I use it today? I
Exactly.
really don't like to look at big books or stuff that's going around because the insights come from the subtle level where poetry plays a huge role. So we are talking today, Bob, with you because we want to understand leadership in a manner that a lot of us have probably not seen. So we want to unleash the leader within ourselves. We want to unleash that person, that latent, that potent leader that exists but is not flowing out. So my question to you, first question would be based on that. Does everybody have a leader within them, or is it our leaders made later?
No, I believe everyone has a leader within them. Now, some people might be naturally more gifted at public speaking, or they might be more gifted at thinking about a strategy. But each and every one of us today already leads. We
Right.
lead at home. We lead in the mosque or the synagogue or the church. We lead in our neighborhoods.
Right.
We lead at work when we speak up and say, I'm not really sure we should do that. So every one of us already has wonderful talents within. And most of the time, though, we cover them up. We put a bushel basket over the light and we don't unleash that latent leader.
Right.
So I believe leadership is primarily a choice that you make to say, this time I will step up. This time I will speak up, and you unleash your latent leader.
Right. And if we were to just take it a little further, how would we now define leadership? Because everybody, as you say, everybody has a latent a leader within them. They do not unleash it. It's a choice. So, given that it is a choice, how would we define leadership for ourselves if we were to just start thinking, I want to make that choice to be a leader in my life or wherever else? So, how would I tell myself, okay, now start here?
Well, we actually looked at all the definitions of leadership when we were writing Triple Crown Leadership, my son and I. And believe it or not, we found over 200 different definitions of
Right,
leadership.
right,
And it's having an influence over somebody and a whole variety of other things. I believe leadership and management are related, but they're not the same thing. They overlap at times. Management is about controlling things. It's about budgeting and planning and things like that. It's mainly transactional.
right.
But you do something for me and I'll do something for you. Leadership, as we talked about with poetry, as you said so well, when it touches your soul, your heart, elevates your soul, it's transformational.
Right,
So leadership is essentially about taking people to a better place.
right.
Leadership is essentially about taking people to a better place. It's about serving them. It's not about you, the leader. That's where we've gotten so wrong. That's where the leadership model of hierarchical control is so wrong. I learned the hard way over the years through my CEO mistakes that leadership was not about Bob being in charge, being in control, having all the answers. Leadership was truly what Robert Greenleaf said, what many of the poets over the years have said, it's about serving other people. Lao Tzu in the Tao 2,600 years ago said the leader is best when the people say we did this ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I get it. I think, yeah, very true. It's about others. It's not about the leader. It's about what the leader can help other people do. If I were to
That's
put it.
why, and that's why we say that leadership is a group performance.
Yes.
Not a solo act. I mean, so much of the leadership literature is what can you do to be a leader, how to be more decisive, how to be more strategic. It's all about you. But if you look at leadership in the context of organizations, certainly at any one point in time, Abha, there's only one leader on a project. Otherwise, you have chaos.
Right.
But over time, leadership is dynamic. It's organic.
Right.
It ebbs and flows. Sometimes you lead and I follow you. Sometimes I lead and you follow me. There was a wonderful country and Western song by James Michael Montgomery that says, life's a dance, you learn as you go. Right. Sometimes you lead and sometimes you follow. Right. And that's what leadership is. It's a dance between people. It's a relationship that is dynamic and organic. And that's what makes it so beautiful.
Absolutely. And you mentioned about organization. So I think it flows from one to the other at different points of time. And it's not just one leader standing there and saying, it's like not a class monitor. It's about the organic flow of the energy between people, and sometimes somebody leads and sometimes you follow, and that's so powerful. And you're talking about, because I have authored a book on women's leadership, and you know what? I've got two poetry in front of the book. So I was asked this question. This is a leadership book, and why do you have poetry there? So I have an advocate there in Bob Van Urich saying that yes, there is leadership and poetry can be connected. In my book, I got two poetries right in the beginning of the book. So people have to bear with that before they go into the principles of what leadership means, in my view. So if Bob, someone doesn't want to lead? You know, we are saying everybody has a latent leader, but someone says, okay, I do not want to.
Yes, that's certainly a choice. And there may be times in your life when you have family circumstances or health circumstances where you don't want the responsibility, the mantle of leadership. And that's fine. We need good followers. We need loyal, dedicated people who believe in our purpose, our mission, our values, and want to help us there. But I would say there are times, undoubtedly, there will be times in your life when someone will say something and the crowd wants to go some way, and you know deep in your heart this is not right. And that's an opportunity for you to lead. And I look back on my life when I was sitting in those meetings and the group wanted to go one way and I didn't think it was right, and I didn't speak up. I wasn't a voice of one. I didn't speak truth to power. And Abha, I regret those days. I regret those days. So, of course, there will be times when you say, I just want to follow. But there will be times when you will say, I must lead. I must step up. Even as a voice of one in this room for 5 minutes, I'll speak up and express my piece. Then you're a leader.
Then you're a leader. Absolutely. Absolutely. I have always raised my voice, even when I was not asked to. So I was very unpopular because of that, but it's okay. I mean, I learned to live with that. So you, Bob,
I believe it. I believe it about you. Yes, young lady, I believe it.
if Bob, tell me, and if somebody makes a choice to say, okay, I want to lead, how should they be certain in their mind that they are qualified to lead?
Well, first of all, believe in your talents, believe in your passions, believe in your conscience, your heart, believe in yourself. You must start by saying, I do have gifts. I do have things to offer. Everyone has gifts to offer. When I hear someone say, oh, I could never lead that because I am just an engineer. I am just a housewife. I am just a truck driver. I say, wait a minute, stop, stop, no. Because in the companies that I ran, and we had many successes over the years,
Right.
by unleashing those latent leaders in the factory, in the sales force, in the engineering laboratory, that's where the great ideas came from.
Right.
So recognize that you have talents. But I think it's also important to set your moral compass. I am a great believer that one should define one's personal values.
Right.
What are the personal values that will guide my life? Because I do know from experience that there will be ethical dilemmas, moral temptations
Right.
that will be put in front of you. And if you haven't defined your moral compass for what you want to, how you want to guide your life, it will be so much more difficult to make the right decision. The
Right.
emotions, the pressure of the moment, the peer pressure, the
Right.
pressure from your boss to do
Right.
something,
Right.
and you will be tempted to take that first step down the slippery slope. So first of all, believe in yourself and your talents, and then define your moral compass.
Right.
There was an interesting study at the University of North Carolina in the United States. Just by putting in your email signature block a virtuous quote like honor is great or something like that. Just putting that in your signature block will reduce the incidence of unethical behavior, because people will see in Abba's signature block,
Right.
oh, she's an honorable person. She quotes Rumi or Gibran or whatever,
Right.
and I'm not going to ask her to cut this corner. I'm not going to ask her to do something that is not quite right. And so the incidence of unethical behavior goes down if
Right.
you define your moral compass. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Absolutely. This is going in my signature now because I have some other stuff. I'm going to add one there. So thank you for the idea. That's going to go there. So tell me, Bob, when we're talking to normal people who can lead and who can be leaders, there are so many in academic books. There are so many leadership styles that people talk about, and people try to slot themselves into, this is probably me. Where, according to what you're saying and what I also understand, when you unleash yourself as a person, you put your personal values there, you put your talents and gifts there, you have your own personal way of looking at something, and then you bring in people to believe in what you're saying and allowing them to sort of mix up with that particular vision or mission and walk together with them. What leadership style is that?
Well, there are many different leadership assessments. We have the Myers-Briggs
Yeah.
personality assessment. We have the Insights wheel. In Myers-Briggs, I'm an ENTJ,
Okay.
extroverted, intuitive thinking judger. In the Insights wheel, I'm a red, which means I talk too much, I interrupt people, I finish their sentences. I have to learn to dial it down. What we say in Triple Crown Leadership, the book that Greg and I wrote, is that you can't just stay stuck in your personality style. You need to flex between what we call, Abba, steel and velvet.
Right.
Steel is your willingness to use your title, your position, your authority, your power, if you will, to say, here's something that is not negotiable.
Right.
For example, we are going to make our numbers. We are going to achieve our results, but we're never ever going to do something illegal or immoral.
Right.
That is non-negotiable.
Right.
And I, the boss, say, you make your numbers, but you never break the rules. Okay? Do you understand? That's steel. And if you're not willing to use steel, people will run over you.
Right.
But if you use steel all the time, people will just shut down
Right.
and wait for you to tell them what to do. So most of the time you have to be velvet, which is listening, asking questions, letting other people lead, zipping your lip, being quiet. I used to have to write at the bottom of my tablet in a meeting, be quiet, Bob. Don't talk, Bob, because I would talk too much, and I needed to get other people in there. So regardless of your style, I'm red, too talkative. I have to learn to dial it down, but there are times I have to say, this is how we're going to do it. So a good leader flexes their personality style between steel and velvet. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. It reminds me of the iron fist in a velvet glove. which often
Yes.
we've read in leadership books. So in your book also there's a mention, and there's a space where you talk about, when you're talking about why you want to lead, there is a chapter or a narration about ego. Are you leading because you want to serve others, or are you doing it for your own ego? And you, how, because this is a question that is often not answered by the people who are wanting to lead. So they don't like this question.
Yes, well, that's because they answer it from the ego point of view, as I
Right,
did.
right.
When I got out of Harvard Business School, as you mentioned, at the age of 24, I had a simple goal, Abba. I want to run something. That was all about my ego.
Mm-hmm.
I, at 24, now because I've got a business degree from Harvard, I'm qualified to lead other people. It was all about me
Right,
being in charge, and it didn't even matter what I was in charge of. I
right,
want to run something as long as I was in charge of. And that had to get knocked out of me.
right.
That egocentric view had to get knocked out of me, and that's where I started to learn about servant leadership. And it's not about you; it's about them. And that was a mind flip for me.
Uh,
So so what we say in our writing is that not only do you have your personal values, your moral compass, but you collaboratively define the shared values with your group. How
right,
do we want to behave? How do we want to treat each other, our
right,
customers, our vendors? And then you give people, and I'm going to pause on this phrase now, an irrevocable license to lead by the shared values. You empower them. I empower you. You have an irrevocable license to lead by the shared values.
right,
If you're leading something by our shared values, I've got your back.
right,
I'm never going to call you down.
right.
And that is what empowers people and unleashes their latent leader so that
Mm,
your organization is not just depending on you,
right,
the one at the top, but everybody is leading at different times on different things depending on the situation and who's involved in their passion.
right, right. So that's a good one. I like that. I've made a note of that, though I'm not supposed to do that now. It's the irrevocable license to lead by shared values. I think if anybody who's listening and watching this, please make a note of that, because if you have to have people walking along with you as you lead or as you follow, this is probably the I think the thing, the phrase that you should go by, and always remember that this is so important.
And the reason it's important is that the other ways to empower people are to write a policy. You're allowed to do this, but you're not allowed to do that. But
Right,
Abba, you can never write enough policies and procedures. The world is too dynamic. Or
right,
the other way to empower people is the boss says, well, I, Bob, empower you, Abba, to do something. But
right.
then I can just as easily
Take it up.
disempower you and take it back.
Right,
So while policies are necessary and bosses have to say, I empower you, the
right,
best way to unleash people, the best way to empower them is to give them an irrevocable license to lead by the shared values. And then you unleash this team of tigers that
right,
is awesome.
right. So I think we should make a quote board of that one and have it pasted in the back of our rooms. So I'll steal that one. So this
Good.
is nice. So let me come to the book, the leadership wisdom lessons from poetry, prose, and curious verse. You've got some astonishing, extraordinary people's writings over there: poets, presidents, activists, soldiers, educators, journalists, CEOs, and they can all, they've all become part of that. They can all read this, they can all understand what's, and you put it in different parts. It's in three different parts, I guess the book is. So the first part, it says leading yourself first, which is, I think, the first lesson of leadership, or not even a lesson. I think this is an ongoing process for anybody who's in a leadership position to know how to lead. I mean, we have to lead ourselves first before we can lead anybody else. So give us an overview of the first part of the book, which says leading yourself first.
Well, leading yourself first, as you said, is really essential. And maybe the best way I can illustrate that is to read a short poem that's in that section. Uh, It's by an author that not much is known about, Jackson Kiddard, and it's only 7 lines, so it's not too long, Abba.
Right.
It's called Teaching You.
Teaching.
But let me
Yeah.
just read this. Anything that annoys you is for teaching you patience. Anyone who abandons you is for teaching you to stand up on your own 2 feet. Anything that angers you is for teaching you forgiveness and compassion. Anything that has power over you is for teaching you how to take your power back. Anything you hate is for teaching you unconditional love. Anything you fear is for teaching you courage to overcome your fear. Anything you can't control is for teaching you how to let go and trust the universe.
Wow. Wow. This is so simple but so profound. I think when I'm listening to this, because I think we all know this, we've all read it somewhere or the other. But when you put it under the heading of leadership, and when you slot it as leadership, it just sounds like a simple but a huge message for us to know ourselves before we can ever go out to lead somebody else. So this is
Exactly.
nuts. Thank you so much for that. This is the poetry. This is the poem that Bob just read is from his book, Leadership Wisdom: Lessons from Poetry, Prose, and Curious Verse. And that's part one of the book, Leading Yourself First. The poem was Teaching You by Jackson Kidder. So please go get that book, because this is, and there's a lot more there. He's got some fantastic authors and poets over there, and he's got their poetries in the book. And you must go get this book, because this is going to be an amazing read, Bob, I think. Tell us about the second part. The second part is about leading others.
Well, yes. And how do you lead others? And we were talking before about servant leadership. And I quote Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the book. He was the civil rights activist in the 1960s who helped America understand that it needed to address the civil rights of many minority groups. And he has a wonderful quote that I've always loved. It's a short one. I'll just read it to you. He said, "Not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great, because everyone can serve. All you need is a heart full of grace and a soul generated by love."
Wow. I don't think we need to go to college for studying leadership. It's all there. It's all there.
It's all there.
It's all there. And I am like I am a huge. Have you heard of Swami Vivekananda? He was a youth leader from India in the 1800s, and I have been following him from the age of 9 or 10, because we used to go to elocutions from his passages. And I still remember, because that one line has changed my life. And I want to because I'm just now taking the liberty to, because you're reading out poems and quotes from people. This is so encouraging for me to use something like this in my work. And I need your permission to just 100, it's about 13 words, which changed my life. Do I have your permission to say them? Okay.
Of course.
This is by Swami Vivekananda, and he said, men, men, men. And when he used to say men, he meant women as well. So it's men, comma, men, comma, men. So it's like men, 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 these are wanted. Men, 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 these are wanted. Everything else would be ready. But strong, vigorous, believing young men, sincere to the backbone, are wanted. 100 such, and the world becomes revolutionized.
Oh, wow.
Oh, I said,
oh, wow.
I want to be one of those 100. And, you know, this is what changed my life from a very simple place to somewhere where I believe that, you know, we are here to serve. We can choose to be one of those 100. So every time I say this, I get goosebumps. So you'll find that wherever in my website, also everywhere you'll find this quote. So this is such a great conversation.
I'm gonna borrow that quote from you, and that may go in my next book.
Yes,
there, okay?
yes, please. I'll send that to you. So this is one of this is so great. I mean, leading yourself, leading others, and in the end, in the part 3 of your book, you talk about leaving a leadership legacy, which is again, I mean, if we just forget because I was reading this book and one of my team members said, "Does this not amount to ego?" I said, "I don't think so. I don't think it's ego. I think it's about the amount of work or amount of service you can do while you are there. Period. And let's not look at it as ego, but we'll ask Bob that question."
Yes, the reason it is not ego is that it's not about you, but it is about the organization that you leave when you're gone.
Right.
Either you die or you move on. And if everything that you've built, as good as it may be, as ethical, as moral, as sustainable, if it all falls apart
Right.
after you leave, then you have not been a good leader.
Right.
So you must think about the DNA of the organization. Do you have people who have head and heart? Are they operating by the shared values? Do they have an irrevocable license to lead by the shared values? Do they trust each
Right.
other? Do they respect each other? Is the structure strong? Is the strategy good? So you need to think about the legacy that you leave there if you want to be a good leader. If it all falls apart when you're gone, you haven't been a good leader. So
Absolutely.
that's and not too many books talk about the legacy that you leave as a leader. Or if they do, it's all about, oh, I was great. Sales went up and profits went up, and but then I left, and oh my God, everything fell apart because I borrowed from the future and I polluted the environment and I burned out the people. That's not good leadership.
Right. 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 So, Bob, all through the book, there is your commentary that comes with it. With
Yes.
all the poems, with everything there, you've given your comments about each and everything and what you think about leadership in that context. So when we get the book and when the readers go out and get this book, what are we looking? Because I can see there's inspiration there. I think not just information or a fun read. There's a lot of inspiration sitting in the book. So with your commentary, I'm looking forward to understand very clearly. Is there also a sort of a detailed version of what your concepts are, or is it just commentary on the poetry?
Well, I think you will derive from the commentary what my concepts are. I mean, love, either your leadership is rooted in love or fear. That's basically what it comes down to. Either you are there for yourself or you're there for serving others. Either you build trust or you don't. So the concepts come out, especially in the practical applications, because I will give you on each poem or prose passage 3 or 4 questions that you should ask yourself that day. And when you answer those questions, you will see what I'm driving at. So I think my commentary comes out with the essence of my leadership. Yes.
Fantastic. So every time, I mean, you go into the book, you read the poetry, you read the poems, you read the prose. There are questions at the back of each one of them. So you can ask those questions to yourself. You can answer those questions for yourself, and there'll be a lot of leadership understanding and understanding of yourself and inspiration for you to take up a leadership position, not a position, but a place of leadership to serve others. So, Bob, this is amazing. I'm so happy. I'm going to go through this book one by. I'm reading at the. I'm looking at the introduction. I'm looking at the content of this. And if people are not watching it, please, it's right here. So I've got it in front of me, and so I'm actually just wanting to get over and with the interview go read this as soon as I can. So everybody go get that book. Get Bob Vanurik's book called Leadership Wisdom Lessons from Poetry, Prose, and Curious Verse. Bob, where can we find you? Is there a website where we can find you?
Yes, it's my name, bobvanurek.com, BOBVANOUREK, bobvanurek.com. And you can email me at bob@triplecrownleadership.com. That was our first book, bob@triplecrownleadership.com. I love to talk to people on the internet. There's no charge. Ask me questions. Tell me about a poem that you love that I should put in my next book. I love to converse with people about this subject.
I'm going to send you some of mine. So I think you'll have a
Perfect.
couple to put in your book. So everybody watching and listening, you can find Bob on www.bobvanurek.com. I'll spell it for you, BOBVANOUREK.com, and you can email him on bob@triplecrownleadership.com. That's his first book, leadership book. So he's inviting you to speak to them. He has no idea. He's in for some interesting people coming his way, or maybe people are going to just crowd around you and ask you lots and lots of questions. So Bob, thank you very much for your time. Absolutely enjoy speaking to you. Wish you immense success with this book, because I think we need to start moving on from academic straitjacket formulas of people building to real life organic stuff that we all can relate to and which touches our hearts.
Thank you, Abba. And I want to tell you how much I admire and appreciate the work that you do. You are making a huge difference
Thank
in
you.
our world that needs this kind of work. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob.